Right, then, in which case I will kick off and I will try to share my screen and hopefully we have no technical issues. So bear with me. Can everybody see my screen? Can someone give me a thumbs up? Or... Yeah, brilliant. Perfect. Great. Right, well, in which case, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming this morning. So my name is Callum Stubbs and I'm from an organisation called the National Lottery Community Fund. And I guess, first of all, thank you for Ealing CVS for organising this and hosting us today. So I'm going to be talking about this presentation, and my colleague Hannah Cretney is also with us as well, who will also be kind of comparing this with me. Can I ask everyone just to mute themselves while we do the presentation, if that's all right? And then there'll be time for questions and things afterwards. Brilliant. So yeah, welcome. So my name is Callum and I'm a funding officer from the National Lottery Community Fund. And I'm going to tell you today a little bit about kind of who we are and everything like that. So first of all, this is just going to give you a very kind of quick overview of what we're going to be talking about today. So first of all, kind of give you an idea about the team and then about our purpose and priorities, the kind of things that we provide funding for, who and what we fund, and how to apply. And we're also going to have a special guest pop up as well to kind of quickly talk to us about their experience of actually receiving funding recently, from an organisation that's based in Ealing. So we're going to split it up. So I'm going to do the first half, and then Hannah's going to jump in later on and kind of take on the baton, if you like. So first of all, obviously I've mentioned I'm Callum and I've mentioned about Hannah, but who actually are we and what do we actually do? So we are in the West London team and we deal with the over £10,000 funding stream. And the way that it works is that we are local officers. So we have certain kind of boroughs that we focus on. And for me, I have several boroughs. One of them is Ealing. So pre-COVID, I was out and about in the community, connecting with grant holders, doing these sorts of events in real life, if we can remember those days. When we could actually talk to people in person and kind of have these connections kind of face to face. And then Hannah, who will be jumping into this presentation in a bit, is as a funding officer that covers Hounslow, as well as several other boroughs in West London as well. Alongside us, we've got Destiny, who I believe is also in the call today. And then we have John in the team, and we have Ella Mison, which is a name that might sound familiar to some of you. And she is the manager that oversees all of that. And Ella has been with us for a number of years. She's been quite active in West London for a long time. But obviously I'm saying about the fund and the National Lottery and all this sort of thing, but you might be wondering, who on earth are you? Who on earth is this organisation? I don't know much about this. So really, the way it works is that the National Lottery itself, as in the gambling side of things, was established, I think it was about 27 years ago now, with the intention that a proportion of that money can be given to good causes. And so I think now it's about 27% of all the money from the National Lottery is given to good causes. And they established 11 different funders, all with different focuses to distribute that money. Some of those funders only get a proportion of their overall income from the lottery, and other funders like us are fully funded by the National Lottery. We are and the Community Fund are the largest distributor of National Lottery money. Actually, while we're kind of talking about this, if anyone's ever played the National Lottery, or especially if you've ever won the National Lottery, it'd be interesting to know. So just drop that in the chat. If you have ever won the National Lottery, I'd be very interested to hear. And you might be a good connection for all of us after this. And so the way it works is they establish those 11 different funders. Some of them have quite general focuses like us. We're more of a generalist funder, and I'll tell you more about what that means later. And some of them are more specialist. So you have ones that will only fund sports projects. So for example, Sport England might sound a familiar name. They're National Lottery funded, or the Arts Council, or the Heritage Fund. All of these are other organizations that were established to receive lottery money. And so at the moment, every week, about 30 million is raised by National Lottery players to be given to good causes and spread amongst all those different funders that I've talked about. Specifically us, as the National Lottery Community Fund, we distribute about 600 million a year across the UK through our different funding streams, both the over 10,000 I've mentioned, the under 10,000. We also have kind of more strategic or kind of fixed term ones you may have heard of over the years if you've been involved with fundraising. There's always different ones that kind of come and go, as well as our main offer. Alongside that, obviously last year, I'm sure a number of you are aware that we also distributed some emergency COVID funding. So that was an additional 200 million across the UK, as well as the regular money we were giving out. That was those short-term, kind of up to 6 months funding, up to 100,000 to kind of help you with that immediate COVID response. And I think I know a number of you here actually today did receive some of that funding. So what is our purpose? What are we actually aiming to do, and what do we aim to achieve? As I've mentioned already, we're a generalist funder. And so that means we can fund any kind of organization. And so how do we then actually make decisions? How on earth do we decide if it's generalist funding that's open all year round? And so really we want to support organizations that basically matter to people in the communities that they're in. And we want to see demonstration of that. We use our funding to help kind of build relationships and create stronger and more connected communities. And we also just support charities and community groups to basically be more vibrant, diverse and active within their local areas, and also kind of across boroughs, across regions, and even kind of nationally. And there's ways that we kind of want to see that, and I'll get into that more in a minute. And so some of the kind of parts of that, to drill down into it a little bit more, is that we want to see that you're people-led. And I'm going to use a few buzzwords today, and I apologize because we do sometimes slip into funder language. So I'm sorry if I do kind of say a few buzzwords, and I'll try and cut through that. But the first one we want to see is people-led, which is effectively that you're working with your users, the people that you deliver to, that they have a stake and an involvement in the work that you do, and that you're not just giving them something, but they are feeding in. Maybe they even directly you have a steering group made up of your users, or your users are on your board, or maybe even that you're entirely a user-led organization and everyone that works for you has been a user or volunteer or kind of directly benefited from, received something from the project over the years. We also look for things that are organizations that are strengths-based. And so that's really making the most of local skills and experience and knowledge that exist in all of our communities. There's always these amazing local people that everyone knows someone or lots of people like that these amazing like local connections. They have amazing skill sets. They're just great people to know. They have really good connections. And we just want to see that you're making the most of those connections, those people that have those skills and that knowledge and that experience to kind of benefit the community and build up what you're trying to do. And another part of that is that you're connected, that you are not operating in a bubble, but that you are also kind of connecting with other organizations, that you have good referral routes, that you maybe work in partnership, like you sit on the Ealing Advice Forum, for example, or connected with MISAC and everyone there, that you are kind of involved with all these different groups, and that you kind of are part of the wider ecosystem of Ealing, of Hounslow, of wherever that you operate. And also I've mentioned about stronger relationships, and that this is a bit more about priorities. And I know this is a bit abstract at the moment, but later on we are going to hear from kind of a bit more detail of what this looks like, and even from an organization that was funded. So it makes it a bit more, brings it to life a bit more, if you like. And so we want to see kind of stronger relationships. We want to see that you are building those relationships, like I said earlier, about those referrals, those networks, that you don't compete with other organizations that do the same work as you, for example, that you work in partnership, that you maybe even do partnership funding applications, or you offset, they have a certain strength in this area and you have a strength in that area, and you work together to kind of overall meet the need in the slotting together in that pieces of the puzzle to fully solve that issue or address that issue. We also look for projects increasingly now that are basically you making the most of places and spaces, and that can be a physical place such as a park or just an outdoor area, or it could be a virtual space. And increasingly over the last year or 18 months, we've really found the benefit of those virtual spaces, those virtual forums. It could even be a YouTube channel or a podcast or something like that, a different medium to engage with people and connect with people. And we want to see that you're making the most of that. I guess the clearest example is in your local communities. There's maybe a slightly disused park, and you just start to run projects there. You maybe have kind of activities happening in that area. And that's the kind of things that we want to see. And especially over the last 18 months, everyone's really appreciated the value of those community spaces, the way you can connect and come together. So we really want to see that you're kind of doing that sort of work. And as well as all of that, we want to see early action approaches. Not always, it doesn't have to be, but we are keen to support work that does do that, that does kind of try and address issues at the earliest possible stage. And that you are kind of empowering the users to basically achieve their full potential, and maybe doing that early intervention approaches to try and prevent issues from growing in the future, so then they really can achieve everything that they want to achieve and wish to achieve in life. And so, especially through COVID, we obviously need to acknowledge COVID has changed everything, has changed the way that funders operate, and changed the way that you deliver. It's changed a lot of things, and we are conscious of that. And so we are conscious that even if, especially if you're applying for multi-year funding, things will change. So what you're doing in your first year may be totally different from what you're doing in your third year, for example. And so that we want to say that we are flexible as a funder. We are conscious that that's fine, that's okay, and we accept that it may change, and it's just we're open about that. If you're open with us about that, we can be flexible and supportive and help you to develop. And if you are funded for one thing and subsequently want to change it and actually use the money in a different way, that is possible. And we obviously last year did our COVID emergency funding. We're not doing that anymore, but now we're trying to take a lot of the learning from that approach last year to inform our ongoing multi-year funding, and just frankly the way we operate as a funder. We can always try and do better, and we always try and listen to what's going on out there. And so this is a part of that, and it is a conversation, and we are always trying to listen and evolve and do better. So I just wanted to put that out there and to mention that COVID, not kind of have it as a separate conversation. And so obviously I've talked about all those priorities and things like that, but then the real reason you're here is actually our funding offer. What do we actually offer? And I've mentioned about those kind of fixed term funding streams that maybe come and go, but we also have some ongoing funding streams that are open all year round. And my colleague Hannah is going to seamlessly jump in a second to talk about those in a bit more detail.
Yeah, hi everyone, thanks Callum. So I'm going to talk about the National Lottery Awards for All programme relatively briefly, and then about Reaching Communities and Partnerships, which is the programme that Callum and myself work on in a bit more detail, and kind of take you through what the application process looks like if you're interested in applying to it. So we have the National Lottery Awards for All programme and Reaching Communities and Partnerships, both of which, if you want to apply, will be typically through the website, although if you do have specific communications requirements, we're able to support you to make applications in other ways too. Next slide, please, Callum. So National Lottery Awards for All is our most popular funding programme in England. It's typically supporting kind of smaller grassroots groups and organisations who may not have previously received grants from the lottery. And it's the smaller size grants, so they're from £300 up to £10,000, and just for 1 year. So this isn't a multi-year funding stream. And you can only receive one Awards for All award in any 12-month period. So as I said, applications are made online. It's quite a straightforward, hopefully light touch process. You just need to answer one question. And once you submit that, you typically receive a decision on whether you've been successful or not within 12 weeks. So as I said, we don't manage Awards for All, so you would be kind of in contact with our central team who are based in Newcastle. Next slide, please, Callum. Thank you. So Reaching Communities and Partnerships, as I said, this is what the local funding team manage, and so the rest of the presentation will be a bit more focused on this and the application process. So we can fund individual organisations and also partnerships through this programme, and the grants are larger grants from £10,001 and up, and it's multi-year funding, so anything from 1 to 5 years. It's an open programme, a rolling programme, so you can apply at any time, and applications are typically online. You can also submit applications via videos, and as I said, if you have any additional communication needs, we can support you to make an application. What we're able to fund, we can fund direct costs and project related costs around delivery, organisational development costs, and also core and fixed costs. We are able to fund capital costs, but typically in London, we don't fund a huge amount of capital projects. In terms of our funding, you can expect us to be flexible and responsive to what your community needs. So whether you need that longer or shorter term support, and whether your request is for a particular activity or to create a more fundamental change, and also whether the organisation is to support a single organisation or whether it's a partnership coming together. So we can fund the expansion of existing projects or completely new projects, and the development of new ways of working. We can cover the costs for sharing learning and showing impact. So maybe things around demonstrating community cohesion or EDI development, demonstrating lived experience leadership and establishing partnerships with other community stakeholders. We can also support organisations to adjust to the new normal. So that might be things around, a focus on financial or strategic planning, or, operational planning, restructuring your organisation or your delivery. Next slide, please, Callum. So who can apply? You can apply if you're a voluntary or community organisation, or a registered charity, or a constituted group or club, or a not-for-profit company, community interest company, or community interest organisation. We definitely welcome applications from groups who haven't had lottery funding previously, and for those who are supporting communities who've been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic or are disadvantaged in other ways. So who we can't accept applications from are individuals or sole traders, or companies that pay profits to their directors or shareholders or members. We also can't support organisations that are based outside of the UK. And we do have some governance requirements for organisations' applications. So we need you to have at least 2 trustees who aren't related either through marriage or civil partnership, or like blood relations, who are listed on Companies House or the Charity Commission. And we also can't accept organisations applying on behalf of another organisation. Thank you, Callum. Next slide. So this is an overview of what the application process looks like. So as I said, you'll typically apply through the National Lottery Community Fund website, check your eligibility, that you are able to apply to us, and then submit that application online. Then usually within 12 weeks, you'll receive an email either that it was an unsuccessful proposal, or that we'd be interested in finding out more and it's something we'd like to take forward, and we will request some additional information. It's at that point that you will meet your local funding officer, most likely. So as Callum said, if your organisation is based in Ealing, it will likely be in touch with Callum, or in Hounslow, it would be myself. And so we'll have some back and forth there, and take quite a conversational approach to make sure that we have all the information we need to kind of really build a good picture of what it is you're proposing, and to have your final stage assessment ready. You'll then confirm completion of your proposal and that you've given us everything that we've asked for, and await a final decision. And again, that takes 12 weeks. So typically end to end, the process is about 6 months. So at this point, I think Callum's going to introduce a current grant holder who's been through the process and can hopefully describe how the experience was for them.
Yes, thank you, Hannah. So I just thought here it could be interesting for everyone to bring in someone that's actually very, very recently just started a multi-year grant with us. They're an organisation called the Log Cabin Charity, and hopefully Monique is in the room, or still in the room. And she's just going to come onto the stage just for a couple of minutes, I believe, to talk to us about her experiences of going through the process over the last kind of 6 months or so. So Monique, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you and see you okay, yeah.
Okay, great. So hi, everyone. I'm the fundraiser over at the Log Cabin Charity, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. We've been in the community for 40 years. And this year in particular, as you can imagine, COVID really impacted us. So we originally interfaced with the National Lottery with one of their COVID grants that Callum had mentioned earlier. And I think that was back in, I want to say, June of last year. And we were successful with that. And then that grant ran out, and I reapplied for a grant, for the Reaching Communities grant. And we were very optimistic, thinking that in addition to the extension and continuation of funding we had got with our COVID grant, that we could also do a partnership project. And it soon became apparent that unfortunately, just the other revenue streams that we had at the Log Cabin, our room rentals and whatnot, just weren't picking up. So in addition, we also noticed that the needs of the children had changed dramatically over the year, and we had a lot more one-to-one children, and in some cases 2-to-1 children coming, and that was a cost that we hadn't really factored in. And so as Callum was mentioning, you might apply for one thing and then end up having to pivot. And so we started having discussions in terms of, is this partnership idea an option, or should you pivot your application and focus on your sole original project, which is the log cabin site? So, I had to go back and rejig some things, and it was very easy, very straightforward. The application and just having multiple discussions with Callum was streamlined, pain-free, and we were successful in the end with funding the log cabin for 3 years. And it's actually given us now the opportunity to reevaluate those partnership grants and potentially do something in a much larger scale now that we have the space to sort of plan it out properly and also have the log cabin site financially secure. I will also say that we did apply for Awards for All grant this year as well, and we're successful because, as luck would have it, one of our transport vans that we pick up the children and is integral to our service also is on its last leg. So everything's happening at once, and we were successful with that application as well. And it's, as Hannah was saying, extremely easy to apply for, very streamlined. Yeah, so I think all in all, they make it super easy. I've applied for other grants for much less funding, and the grant process is a lot more complex than the national lottery. So I definitely recommend giving it a go.
Amazing, thank you, Monique. That was a really good example. Thank you so much. That was really clear. Thank you. Brilliant. Hannah,
No worries.
Thank you, Monique.
Thanks, Monique. Yeah, can I have the next
No
slide?
worries.
Fab, thank you. So that kind of first stage that we mentioned, what you would need to kind of give us, hopefully it all would make sense and seem pretty straightforward. So we ask what your organisation does and what you'd like to do, whereabouts the work will be taking place, how you'll involve your community. So that kind of goes back to the stuff Callum was talking about in terms of being people-led and making sure that users are feeding into the design of your programme. How your work fits in with the local activities, who will benefit and what difference you'll plan to make, how much money you're asking for and what you'll spend it on, and how long you need the money for. We do also ask about the number of staff and volunteers who have lived experience, and for your main and senior contact details at first stage. So once you submit that, as I said, you should hear back within 12 weeks as to whether it's something we're interested in finding out more about. And then if it is, you'll go to stage 2, which is next slide, please, Callum. Thank you. And so at this point, we would ask you for more detail about your proposal and a kind of proposed budget breakdown, an overview of your organisation's current financial position and a recent bank statement. And as Monique described, this is quite a conversational approach. We have lots of back and forth with organisations to gather the information we need. We don't have any kind of set deadlines, so you're able to gather everything together in your own time and submit it as and when suits you. And we always will ask you if we need anything else. We try to be really proportional, so depending on what it is that you're proposing, we'll kind of maybe ask for more or less detail depending on the project. And once you've sent us everything, we send you a declaration to confirm that you submitted a full stage proposal, and again you'll hear back within 12 weeks as to whether it's been successful. Next slide, please, Callum. So if you are successful, you'll then go through the grant setup process. So you need to return the offer letter that we send to you within a month, and then the grant or project needs to start within 6 months of the award. You then will have contact with your funding officer throughout the lifetime of the grant. That's another key part of our role, to continue that relationship. So we're responsible for kind of grant management, which is essentially grant reporting. Typically you'll send an end of year kind of detailed report and then have check-ins with your funding officer throughout the year in a kind of more informal way. At these check-ins, we like to find out how you're involving people from your community in the project and how it's going, what difference the funding is making, what you're learning and how you're spending the money. Yeah, so as I say, we tend to take a really conversational approach and be really open and honest about progress and feedback, any issues. That is what we're here for. And, you know, if we need flexibility in terms of changing aspects of the grant during the lifetime of the grant, that is also what we're here for. So you can go to our website. I believe the slides will be shared afterwards, and have a look at what that kind of grant management looks like and what we like to see. So yeah, that is it about the process. If you'd like to find out more, you can visit our website at tnlcommunityfund.org.uk. If you prefer to speak to someone on the phone, we've got an advice line which is there. And that's also the email address for kind of the central inbox for our wider team. But I'm sure that if you'd like to get in contact with Callum or myself directly, you're more than welcome to, and we can pick up a conversation and answer any questions if you'd like to do that outside of this space. So thank you, that's it from me. I think we're now going to open it up to questions for myself and Callum. Thank you for listening.
Brilliant, thanks Hannah. So does anyone have any questions for myself, for Hannah, or even for Monique, if Monique's happy to answer any questions about the process? Brilliant. Yeah, so if anyone has any questions now, feel free to ask us or type in the chat. Maybe I'll close this. Can't see the chat.
Neil Jones from Mixed Martial Arts Reform Progression here.
Okay.
Why does it take so long to do such small amounts of money? When I used to work in the bank, you know, you'd never take 6 months to make a loan, and then we've got to get it back. These are grants. It seems an awfully long drawn-out process.
So for the over £10,000 funding process, that can take up to 6 months. And we're talking about that can be up to hundreds of thousands of pounds. That can be up to £300,000, £400,000, £500,000. And obviously, we're looking at applications from all across London, across every type of charity. And so it's partly just to do with capacity, to be really honest with you. If we had a limitless workforce, we could obviously give you responses quicker. But it's partly just about capacity and about kind of taking the time to do that due diligence, because obviously this is public money. And so we are having to make sure that we are doing all the checks and making sure we are kind of doing what is necessary to make sure that we are awarding the money to the right people. And obviously there is a conversation there as to, could it be done more quickly? Could we have a greater risk appetite in terms of maybe not doing as deep a dive into certain organizations? But that is an ongoing conversation, Neil. So it is something that is always going with funders, and they always feel like funders should take longer or shorter. And actually we have cut our processes by about 50% since COVID, because before that it used to take 9 to 12 months. And then obviously last year we had to pivot within weeks to giving out funding very, very quickly. And so some of the learning from that in terms of how quickly we do processes, how regularly our meetings are, we've now drawn back into our reaching communities and partnerships response. And we are always trying to improve and trying to get quicker. So it is always an ongoing journey, Neil, but thanks for the comment. At least I understand the frustration for sure.
I've got a quick question.
Yeah.
I have worked with the job centre on my limited company to coach unemployed people to be able to go back into work for the last 2 years. And out of that, I had people that were ex-prisoners and also homeless. And I have therefore then opened up a CIC, but last year, but I only 2 weeks ago finally got a proper bank account by HSBC, because obviously there's lots of, oh, we've got COVID, it takes time to process, right? So I've now got a second director, so now I need the trustees. Okay, that's going to be quick because I know who to take. But I've raised £2,500 through Just Giving, so it's not, you know, it's not sustainable for me to continue raising through my own network. So am I allowed to apply? Because I haven't really, I've done things, and I've worked with Acton Homeless Concern because they have sent me homeless people to support, right? But I mean, we've placed 4 people into work, and I've only raised £2,500, and I've only got a bank account now. Everything else went through Just Giving. I mean, I can still prove where the money came from and where it went, right? But it still hasn't gone through the account. So I wonder if I'm allowed to apply because it's all new.
So in the sense that you don't have much of a financial track record, obviously for multi-year funding, that can be more of a risk. And like I was saying to Neil a second ago, obviously it is about that risk kind of appetite. But what can be often pretty good for organizations in your position is that awards for all funding that Hannah was mentioning earlier, which is a great kind of first step. I'm sure quite a number of you here, I mean, Monique mentions it earlier. It's a good first point to kind of get that income coming into your account. So then when you start having audited accounts on the Charity Commission or Companies House, you start to have that track record, and you can then start building it up over a couple of years and then go to other funders, get in different funding streams. So I'd say Awards for All is a good starting point for you, Astrid.
And you would, even though it's new, that would still be acceptable?
Yeah, it's something
cool.
that it can be a risk, obviously, and it depends on the conversations at the time of that panel, but
Sure.
that is something to consider. Awards for All, I would say, has started off thousands of charities across the UK.
Cool.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. Well, I might be working with you then, because I'm based in Ealing.
Brilliant.
Hi,
Okay.
Kalam. I'm Shanjit Bala from Sunshine of Hounslow. I'm really happy that since last year and this year, the big lottery, the National Lottery have made such a difference to our organization. We are a voluntary community organization led by disability, people with the disabilities, and supporting people with the disabilities as well. And we've been really successful with the small grants, large grants, and I'm so happy to say the difference it has made to our charity. I tell you, we could not do without this funding at all, honestly. And we've been really successful with the grants, and we've been very supportive, and your staff is brilliant, how they talk, communicate with the public people, and they are very supportive as well.
Thank you, Shanji. And I didn't place her here just to say, she said that on her own. Thank you so much. It's really kind of you to say. And I think I remember seeing you 6 months ago.
Sorry. So I have to second that. I totally agree with everything she said. I have to second that. You guys are brilliant at talking to, communicating, you talk to us, you explain and everything. Yeah, I totally agree with her 100%.
Oh, that's really kind of you. Thank you so much to both of you. That's very good to hear that. We changed the way we operate about 3 years ago. As some of you may remember, we used to even be called the Big Lottery, as Shanji suggested, and it's part of a big change because funders frankly need to change. They need to do a lot better, and so we are trying to make a change and trying to become more locally connected. We're the largest funder, but we're trying to be locally based and locally connected. So it's good to hear you're starting to see the benefit of that. Really, that's really nice to hear that.
We couldn't apply in past because the applications were too long, and now I fill up application, a lot of them myself as well, and I feel a lot more confident because the applications has been made really easy, and the staff is marvelous, very easy to approach, and they are so respectful to everybody who you are. Thank you. I really want to say a big thank you to National Lottery. It has changed so much for us as a community, and we are supporting because of your funding what we could build up, and at least this year only 200 families could benefit from the growing food we are growing at the allotment. And it has made a huge difference for the people or needy people.
That's really kind of you to say that. Thank you, Shanji. And I'm glad this session is being recorded because this is very good feedback. So thank you so much. In the chat, actually, Shanji, Lindy is asking, what is your organization and where are you based? I don't know if you've seen that comment because she might want to connect with you after this.
I can say it on, if you would allow me, please. We are Health and Wellbeing Organization. We are based in Heston and Ealing, Hounslow and Ealing. And we are covering physical, mental health. We are running so many projects, anything to do with the health. So even in the future as well, we are looking forward to National Lottery to support us, keep supporting us in future. So at least people with the benefits or universal credit and the people with the disabilities, at least they can improve their lives and live better and quality of lives as well.
Amazing. Thank you. That sounds like there might be a connection there after this, Shanji. I've just noticed a quick question in the chat from Laurie. In terms of how do you get a track record if you're a new organization? Because I was obviously touching on that a minute ago. And so as I've mentioned, Awards for All is one good way, but there's also other sites which kind of list funders. I don't know if Ealing CVS has their own list as well, but one that I always recommend is called Grant Nav. And that's basically about 130 funders' funding data pooled into one place. It's almost a shopping list of funders that you can go to and look at for different funders. Some are large, some are small, and it will show you what they've funded previously. So then you can see, does my organization fit with what they've funded before? And it gives you a gauge as to maybe even how much to ask for. So you can apply to some of those smaller funders potentially, or some that are specialist funding, maybe startup or new organizations. And that's another good way to kind of get funding. And actually talking about funding, I know in a minute we're going to be hearing from Rachel from the Young Ealing Foundation about their small grant scheme as well.
Hello, I just wanted to say, what was they called? Grant
Nav.
Oh, Grant Nav, yeah.
I'll put a link in the chat actually, just so that people can have a quick look if you're interested, if my mouse is not going.
Helen. Hi, Callum. I think there are 4 hands up on screen. I don't know if you can see them. There's
Sorry, where's the first hand?
Lindy, Lolin, Lodu, and Rahila in that order. Lindy, if you want to start.
I just wanted to ask about how early in our process we could get in touch with you, because we're looking at quite for us, we're a small community, totally volunteer-run organisation, Ealing Croquet Club, and we want to really expand our operations to involve local people much more and really open up site community use. It's a big capital development, but we will also, there's also going to be a lot of other costs and challenges in that. But we're quite early in the process. There's a lot that I think will fit. At what stage is it possible to start a conversation with you? Because we haven't necessarily got fully formed grant application at this point. Obviously, it was going to take 6 months. It would be good the earlier we can talk to you, the better, especially if it's going to help shape our thinking.
Yeah,
is that possible?
Yeah, really good question, Lindy. So after this, actually, I've got a number of one-on-one slots with certain organizations where they can kind of just talk to me about what they're thinking and where they want to go next. And that can be great for that kind of early stage development. Maybe you're not quite ready to apply yet, but you just want to get a feel a bit more. Obviously, we've talked about it in general, but you want to maybe understand how this process applies to you specifically. Those one-on-one chats later, I think there may even be some free slots still, Ian. Is that right? Maybe later in the day, if you did want to book one, Lindy, or if not, we do these events every 6 months or so. Or if you wanted to have a chat with me separately, I'm more than happy for you to have my email, just to touch base, and maybe next year or whenever you're thinking, you can look at reaching communities later on, or Awards for All is a good start for now. There's all the different options from us, and then also
I could chat to you today. Definitely at the stage. I didn't know there were one slots. I don't know how to book.
Are there any more slots, Ian? Maybe Lindy.
I think the next one's 1:50 p.m.
That'll be fine.
Can
you put me in for that?
Yeah.
Amazing, thanks, Ian. So I'll talk to you later then, Lindy.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. The second hand. Sorry, I can't see any of the hands, but who was next? Lolin? Oh, you're on mute.
Hi,
yeah.
hi. I'll be quick. I'm from HeartLink. We are a heart-based support group based in Ealing Hospital. Because of COVID, we're no longer able to operate out of Ealing Hospital. We have 200 to 300 heart patient members throughout Ealing, Southall, the whole borough, and Hounslow. We're a support group. We're not a charity. We're affiliated to the British Heart Foundation. We have a constitution, a committee, our own bank account, a president in Professor Kuna. And we've unfortunately been excluded from a lot of funding because we are not a charity. So my first question is, would we be able to apply for funding under the National Lottery?
So are you a registered organisation, or is it you're just in the umbrella of the British Heart Foundation?
We're part of the, we're affiliated with them. They have a number of heart support groups. So basically they support us. They recognise us as an official heart support group, along with lots of the other heart support groups in the country. Yeah, we have a certificate of affiliation with them.
And what sort of entity are you? Are you kind of registered on the Charity Commission or Companies House?
No, we're not a charity. That's our problem. We are a support group, but we do have a constitution. We do have a full committee, and we do have our own bank account.
Yeah, I understand it is a slightly kind of, it can fall between the gaps, I'm sure. And I think for us, we can fund constituted but unregistered organizations if you're in the process of registering. But if you're not going to be going through the process of registering, I don't think you'd be able to have our funding at this time, unfortunately. But one way you could approach that is maybe directly engaging with the British Heart Foundation about whether you could apply through them. for some partnership funding or reaching communities funding? Because I know that there are a lot of specialist medical funders as well. So that could be a route to pursue.
Yeah, the problem, see, this is why it's so frustrating, because we always get excluded. You know, everything that we try to do, even though we've been going for 25 years, the fact that we're not registered as a charity. I mean, when one of your slides talked about volunteers and volunteer community groups, that's exactly what we are. We're a volunteer community outreach group. So not all volunteer groups are registered charities.
I mean, I think if you're a constituted community group, there is quite a lot of funding available. So not all funders require you to be registered charity. So as long as you're constituted as a community group, a lot of funders will accept you.
Okay, well, perhaps Ian, you can point me in the right direction then.
Yeah.
Because everything I've tried to, you know, I've been successful in one bid, and I've applied for many, many. And my real, you know, my real frustration is that a lot of our members, A, are heart patients, B, come from a very diverse community, and they're elderly, and they get excluded. They get excluded by age, by disability, by digital inequality, and there is no way that I can get any help to bridge those gaps simply because we're not a registered charity. So it's very frustrating. So basically, Callum, you're saying that it's really not worth my while even approaching you.
Unfortunately, not for us directly, but I'm just thinking, and I understand it must be a very frustrating situation. Another way round it could be if you looked at partnerships funding and you maybe talked to another local organization that was a registered charity or a CIC or something like that, and they came in with the request and you came in as one of their delivery partners, for example. That might be a way to go around it. So you get some direct kind of sessional costs, for example. To get money from us. And as Ian's mentioned, there are other funders, I believe, that you could be directly eligible for. Maybe Ian can help you with that. Or there's also the site that I've put in the chat, actually, with a lot of different funders on there. So that might help you as well, Lolin. So there's a couple of options there. But I'm sorry to hear that. It does sound like a frustrating situation. And this is what I mean. Funders can and try and should do better. And I will always feed this kind of stuff back in. Obviously, we're a big beast. It takes a long time to maneuver. But at the end of the day, funding should be getting to the people that need it, frankly. So I do.
Yeah, if you could feed that back, that would be brilliant. Thank you, Callum. Yeah. And Ian, I don't know if you'd booked me a slot with them, Callum, or not. I did ask for one.
Yeah, I think you're down. I'll just check the time.
Do you know what time?
12:20 to 12:40.
Is it worth it, Callum? Now that you've explained it to me.
It's up to you, really. I mean, I feel like we've given you several options just right now, but if you wanted to get into it more, that's fine. If not, you can always email me another time. Ian's got my contact details. That okay. Might be a better way for you, Lolin, but it's up to you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry to jump in at this point, Callum, but there was one point where you mentioned in your notes that organizations can't apply for funding on behalf of other organizations. That would be different from a partnership application, right?
Yeah, good question. So that would be if one organization is applying, but they're not directly delivering anything that they're applying for, and they're purely saying, we want £200,000 for this other charity, and we're not going to do anything. That's not possible. Because obviously, how can we make sure that other organization even knows about the application? But if it's, for example, some sessional cost of Lolin's organization, that they will run 26 workshops a year, whatever, and there'll be cost per sessional people to run that. But then also the other organization will also be doing some work alongside that. That's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I think you have Lodu and Rahila whose hands are up next.
Okay.
Lodu, if you'd like to go next.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Hello, yes.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear, Lord. Yeah.
Good morning to everybody. I am mostly called as a Das from Helpling, a charity registered since 2012, based in Southwell Town Hall. We did receive awards for all in 2017. And then 2018, we were very good. 2019, we were advised to apply for reaching communities. And our idea was accepted in March. Then the funding officer has been asking a lot of information and everything. We have been providing. And by October, that particular funding officer resigned. We were not aware of it. In November, when we tried to chase it, then they said, oh, yours were declined this time because they were trying to ask for quality marks. Okay, first question is, as a small community organization, quality marks is a big thing that we can achieve, number one. Number two, does the lottery fund take that seriously? Number two, that time our funding was okay, the annual report was fine, statement was good because we were funded by Trust for London and some other groups. But in 2008, now we don't have much account to show, like maybe may not be more than 10, 12,000. So can we apply for reaching communities? Because there seems to be come to stage where you show that you have that much, so you can go for a second stage. Or should we go again for only awards for all? Now, these are confusion. And as we try to restart and relaunch our helpline, which has been doing for more than 10 years now in Southall, so we need some advice if you can give now or maybe fix a time with somebody else later. And of course, I did have a chat with some team from Big Lottery who came to see me at Lido Center on this application. They were trying to help me. So can I do the same application? Because that application is quite different. It's like breaking barriers and building bridges, more of community cohesion, things like that. But now it's the pandemic and other different issues, you know. So what is it? First is the quality marks. How do you get it?
Yeah, so I remember these conversations, Lordu, with HelpLink. And so in terms of that specific situation, I think obviously there's a lot of different considerations when we look at an application. And if you're, especially if you're an organization that provides advice, there is obviously sometimes that additional consideration of what level of advice are you providing? Is it accredited or non-accredited? And obviously at the same time, when we look at applications, there are, we're looking at lots of different applications from lots of different organizations all at the same time. And unfortunately, I know we say it in our emails, but we never have enough money to fund everybody. And unfortunately, we do have to make those tough decisions. And then I believe at that time, there were other organizations that maybe had a stronger focus or maybe were a stronger fit with our priorities at that specific point. And obviously, you have no control over who else is applying. So it's always tough. And sometimes we do have to make those decisions. And you were saying your next question was in terms of the size of your organization, how much do you ask?
Give me a break.
So you could apply for reaching communities for obviously the lower end of that multi-year offer, but it's really what's proportionate for you. As I was saying earlier to Neil, actually, in terms of the risk, we are trying to have a bit more of a risk appetite, if you like, these days. So if you work out that you're currently a £10,000 a year organization, for example, but you wanted to ask for £15,000 a year over 2 years, 3 years, that's something that we could consider. We wouldn't now think that's so impossible we wouldn't fund you, because we do understand, especially for smaller organizations, when you want to make that jump, it does look like it's a real increase. But if you can demonstrate why you're ready for that and how, frankly, you help us mitigate the risk, at the end of the day, that's all it's about, then that's fine. So it's really just showing us that you're ready and explaining how you're ready and what systems you've got in place. Does that help to answer your questions, Lordu?
Yeah, we can try. Answer. The other problem is some other funding, when we apply, they're asking you cannot apply for more than 50% of your budget, your last year budget. So if your budget is 10,000, you cannot go for more than 5, which means the smaller groups, we will always remain within the 10,000 budget of the year.
Yeah, no, I understand the frustration. And as I was kind of mentioning, obviously for us, we are more prepared to take those risks maybe than we would have been even 2 years ago, because like I was saying earlier, we've kind of learned from the pandemic, and frankly, we need to do better and fund in different ways, and we need to take more risks. So we can fund organizations that maybe previously haven't been able to get grant funding from us for various reasons. We need to try and cut through that. So if you can help us mitigate that risk, if you do want to scale up a bit, it's just showing what you've put in place, why you're ready, maybe what your track record is. That means it's okay for you to increase what looks on paper like an increase of your overall income per year. Is that okay, Lordu?
One more. Last year we did get funding for emergency fund, COVID emergency fund.
So the emergency funding is now finished. That closed in December last year. Yeah, so that closed in December last year. So we now have gone back to our regular offer, which is the awards for all funding up to £10,000 for up to 1 year, which could be something to consider as well, actually, because that's obviously not too kind of far off maybe where you might be thinking at this stage, and could help you start to build up some of that income again. And then we also have the Reaching Communities and the Partnerships funding, which is the over £10,000. So that's the process that's the main offer that we have now, those kind of 3 ones.
Is there any way we can fix an appointment with any of you to meet some other time?
Yeah, I think I have your email actually, Lordy. So I'll drop you an email separately because I know we've communicated in the past.
Oh, we met last time, isn't it? 2 years back.
Yeah, yes. Brilliant.
Yeah, I'm just aware of time because we need to fit in Rachel's presentation. So I think we've got a quick time for a quick question from Rahila.
Yes, thank you, Ian. I have we are Honshu-based organization working on social, economic, and political empowerment of women. I have a question regarding the application. When we submit application to Reaching Community, we don't have any full-time or part-time staff, and in the application it mentions whether you have full-time or part-time staff. Does it impact on the outcome of our application if we don't have any full-time or part-time staff? Thank you.
Interesting question. Again, that's that thing about risk. Historically, maybe we wouldn't have been prepared to, but now we are increasingly prepared to fund you. And obviously, especially at that point when you want to go from having no paid staff to suddenly having some part-time or even a couple of full-time staff, the amount you're asking for will obviously look relatively high compared to the size of your organization. But we are now prepared to take more of those risks. So it wouldn't, Rahila, it wouldn't kind of instantly mean that you don't get funded just because you don't have full-time staff and you're applying for a full-time role. That's fine. If you can explain why you now want that full-time staff or several staff or whatever it is, that's something we can consider. So don't worry too much.
Oh, thank you so much. Big relief. Thanks.
Okay. Amazing. Thanks. I think we better go to Rachel now, who's going to give a presentation about the Young Ealing Foundation grants.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. Thank you, Ian. I will whiz through this really quickly for you. So if you bear with me just for a moment. Okay, so I'm Rachel. I'm from the Young Ealing Foundation. We're an infrastructure charity in Ealing, which was set up by John Lyons Charity. The wonderful people at John Lyons have given us a small grants pot, so we will be giving out £100,000 over this year. It's specifically for young people in the London Borough of Ealing. To be eligible to apply for us, you need to be a Young Ealing Foundation member. That forms our due diligence part. So we'll need to see things like your safeguarding policy and your public liability insurance. This funding is specifically for groups who have an income under 250,000, and we require you to have 2 unrelated signatories and to have a constitution as well. So that's our bare minimum of grant making for this fund. The grants available are up to £5,000. So you can either ask for project costs if you're working with children and young people. This is if you are an organisation who perhaps works with a number of different beneficiaries. So if you work with adults, but you have a specific project for children and young people, we're more than happy. Or if you work wholly with children and young people, but you just want us to fund a project, more than happy to receive an application for that. If you work exclusively with children and young people, you're also able to ask for up to £5,000 for costs. We've got some key priorities for the fund. So we are really happy to receive applications which either look at digital exclusion, the attainment gap, youth crime and safety, employability, mental health, or domestic abuse and hate crime. So you're more than welcome to put in projects that meet many of those, or perhaps it might just meet one, but we will prioritise applications based on that. So please keep that in mind when you're filling in your application form. To apply, I'm sure Ian will circulate my email after this and the slides. If not, you can go onto our website, the Young Ealing Foundation.org.uk, and there is a grants tab there, and you can request a grants form just by filling in, or you can just email me after this. The deadline is 10 AM on Monday, the 4th of October. So please get your applications in. If you're not a Young Ealing Foundation member, you need to sign up to fill in the application and send it to us, but you can do that at the same time. So please don't wait until your membership is completed to send in the form. Feel free to send in the form first, and then you can get rolling with the application process as well. What happens next? We're going to shortlist eligible applications, and they will go to 2 different panels. One will be a panel of young people from Ealing, and the second panel will be from sector professionals like John Lyons Charity and some of our other ineligible members. And then we're aiming to give decisions at the end of October. If you don't have time to fit in for this round, there will be future rounds coming up. So we've got a January round. You will need to get your applications in by the 31st of December. And there will also be an April meeting, which has a deadline of the 31st of March. So if this round is too soon for you, please feel free to apply at other rounds. Are there any questions at all? Awesome.
Question. Sorry, it's not to do with Ealing. It's I'm just wondering if there's an equivalent to, you know, the Young Ealing Foundation for the Borough of Hounslow.
It's Ian, really.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Young Foundations are funded by the John Lyons Trust, and the John Lyons Trust only funds certain boroughs. So it does fund Brent, it does fund Ealing, but for geographical reasons, it won't fund Hounslow. So there isn't a direct equivalent of the Young Foundation in house, unfortunately.
Okay, thanks.
Fortunate for me. I've left the link for feedback for today's session, and Callum and Rachel and Hannah have given your time and beautifully presented really clearly the information to us. Do leave your feedback, which we can pass on to our funders and which we'd require for the evaluation and monitoring of the session. It's in the chat. Do click on that link. Thank you.
So yeah, I'll send people the slides. We're now going to go into the one-to-one sessions with Callum. So if the people who have got the slots, it's the same link. So just go back and click onto the same Zoom link. Astra is the first one, so she can stay on the call. 11:20 is Carrie Scott. 11:40 is Shanjeet. 12 o'clock is Araba and Helen. 12:20 is Neil. There's going to be a short break for lunch for Callum, and then 1:10 it's Kaveh Kalantari. 1:30 Yvette, and then 1:50 is Lindy.
Can I just double check the last couple there, Ian? Sorry, I think I have a slide.
Yeah, I'll send you an updated list.
Thank you. Brilliant. Well, thank you everyone for coming along today. Lovely to hear from you all. Hopefully that was all clear and helpful.
Thank you.
Thanks, Callum.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.